Hello, this is Cindy Tucker, Americans in Crisis, a Matter of Interpretation. And we're going to be talking about part 2 in the book series. So first, I'd like to say a prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Lead, guide, and protect us in all that we say and do, that it may impact the audience with what we say. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so I want for the guests to introduce themselves again, and of course, maybe a little intro to what's going to happen.
Sure. Again, I'm Tiffany Robinson. I'm glad to be here again, and this is part 2. We talked previously about self-publishing, and now we're going to talk about my 5 children's books that I have published. So I'm looking forward to our conversation.
All right, so first, what has made you want to become an author in the first place?
Sure. So I was first motivated to become an author when I was in graduate school at the University of Louisville. I got a master's in public health degree. And during my studies, a lot of times you'll have projects in the community, and one of our projects was to go and work with a group of elementary school students at an elementary school here, Wheatley Elementary. And we, three of my classmates, went to talk to the kids about a project called Photo Voice. And this is a way to impart social change in a community by teaching people how to take photographs and using those photographs and images and a brief write-up to talk about things in the community that they want to change. So it's a basically a vehicle for social change. And we explained Photo Voice to the kids, and then several months later we went back after the kids had taken their pictures, and there was a big presentation at the school. There were several city officials there, the mayor was there, I believe, all the parents and the kids, and they had all of the pictures they had taken blown up on a big poster board. And we walked around the cafeteria, and these kids told the most poignant stories through their photographs of things that they wanted to change, how they wanted their neighborhood to be better. And I was really struck by this, and as I was driving home, I said to myself, wow, someone should write a kid's book to explain to kids how they can make change in their community through something like Photo Voice. And then a little voice, probably the Lord, of course, in my head said, you know, why don't you do that? And I'm like, okay, why not? So that's when I first started writing my first book, which became Zoe's Sidewalk. So it's not based on it's not a true compilation of what happened with the kids there, but it's based on the events and what I learned about Photo Voice. So that's what got me started in writing, and I haven't been able to stop since. So
yes, I love when you said the Lord put that in your head to do that, because when God gives you that thing, you just got to go for it.
Yeah.
And some people definitely ignore it. I've ignored it at some point in my life, but definitely, I love that. That means this was meant to be.
Absolutely.
So I love that.
Thank you.
So first, I want to go into your first book,
Okay.
Zoe's Garden.
Yes.
So do you mind giving a brief summary for the audience?
Sure. Sure. And Zoe's Garden is actually the second book. So this book was born after Zoe's Sidewalk was published. There was a little girl in my church who just was like, I love Zoe's Sidewalk, when are you going to write another book? Miss Tiffany, when are you going to write another book? And I joke about it, but she would not let me go. So, and I knew I wanted to write more than Zoe's Sidewalk, just because once you get that bug, you're not able to let it go. And I think, like you say, the Lord was just tugging on me to do more. So Zoe's Garden is a book, and all of my books have a central element. So they all show positive depictions of African American families. I want to show that our culture, our families have positivity despite what negative images are put out in the media, and a lot of those are artificial. I just want to show a solid black family that loves each other like most of ours do, just average normal people. So that's one of the first themes. The second one is there's always a public health theme. So in this story, Zoe and her family are living their lives, and summertime is coming, and her family says, hey, you're going to spend the summer on a farm with your cousins. And Zoe doesn't remember them. It's been years since she's been there, and she resists. She gets a little back talk going, gets into a little bit of trouble with her family, but she gets through that, and she ends up on the farm. And of course, like everything you do in life that you're not sure about, but you decide to try anyway, Zoe found that the experience on the farm was actually more than she could have anticipated. She confronted some issues that she hadn't anticipated, and just learned a lot about not only growing fruits and vegetables and living a more healthy life in that way, but also how to get along with new people. There's a picture on the cover of her and one of the other characters in the story, and she learns how to get through some difficult times and become a stronger person than she realized she could be. So there's always a lesson to be learned in my stories.
Right. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
really awesome.
Thank you.
And I love how, you know, it was like the end of school going into summer.
Yes.
And another thing, I was born and raised urban, so going into, you know, countryside on the farm
Mm-hmm.
is kind of unusual and comforting for me.
Yes.
It's kind of a stretch, but definitely I could relate on that level, and I love how you not only put it in the standard version, but how it relates to life.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that.
Thank you.
So I want to get more in depth about Zoe, because of course they're in both the books, besides Zoe Garden. The first one, Zoe's Sidewalk. Do you mind giving a brief summary on Zoe's Sidewalk? Sorry.
Sure. That's okay. Sure. So in Zoe's Sidewalk, it starts off that Zoe is waiting for her grandmother to come home from the hospital. So her grandmother has had a heart attack, and when she gets home, her family explains to Zoe and her brother, this is her and her brother on the cover, that her grandmother will have to have therapy, and they call it her homework, which she doesn't understand, but then she realizes that her grandmother needs exercise to recover. But in their neighborhood where they live, they don't have any sidewalks. And Zoe's really excited because she loves her grandmother. They're very, very close. And she wants to take her out walking in the neighborhood, but her mother's like, no, you can't, we're gonna have to wait. There's only certain times you'll be able to do that. And Zoe's very upset about it, and she's of course concerned about her grandmother and wants to make sure she's gonna get better. And so she's very dejected about that, about not having the opportunity to walk with freedom anytime she wants to in her neighborhood. And the next day she goes to school, and there's a special project. She gets there, and they actually have a photo voice project coming. So a new teacher comes and explains, you can use this camera to take pictures of things you want to change in your neighborhood. So of course Zoe gets the idea that maybe she can change the situation about the sidewalks. And she gets the camera, takes it home, and then she begins taking photos and hopefully eventually getting a sidewalk. We won't tell the ending of the book, but you can imagine what might happen. But here's a picture of Zoe and her brother at the park, which Zoe realizes is a perfect place for her and her grandmother to walk, but they can't get there from their home because there's not a sidewalk linking. So it's Zoe's journey to realizing something that's upsetting and something she wants to change in life, that she actually has the power to make that change. And that's one thing I really value imparting to children. I know when my kids were little, they would come home and say, Mom, we shouldn't be eating this, or Mom, this is a better way to do this, or we should be recycling, or whatever it is. And a lot of times, the things they brought home from school imparted a change in our home and our family. And that's the same thing that Zoe does. She realizes, and I want kids anywhere and everywhere to realize, they have the power to make changes in their communities, in their families. Even though they are kids, they held a lot of power, and I want them to recognize that.
Oh my goodness. It's so weird how I could relate to Zoe. But I love, I'm working on a photo voice project myself with my team, and it's an amazing experience. You learn, you know, the camera stuff, the analysis, etc. And it's awesome because I want to change the world, you know, one step at a time. And with that, have you, besides your kids, have you seen like the huge impact you're making on children's lives while doing this?
So I have to some degree. So I actually do school book talks as well. And so I have a program that I do with the school, with the kids, and just talk through my experience as a writer, the other jobs that are surrounding and available for kids as far as editor, illustrator, even photographer, marketer. We talk about those roles and what kids can do just to take their passion and translate it. So I always have time for a Q&A with the kids. And one thing I do is talk with them about what are they doing in their communities, what changes are they doing with their families or with their friends. And I'm always blown away by the amount of volunteerism and the amount of community impact that kids have already. And so I use the book to try to encourage them to do more or think about new things that they can do. So I would like to think that it's a motivator there to help kids, but they're already doing so much. I always tell the kids and the teachers I get more out of the book talks, I think, than they do, because I'm just so enriched by and hopeful by the things that kids are doing. It's one of my pet peeves. I don't like when people say, oh, these kids today. I always say people who say that don't actually talk to children, because if they did,
Yeah.
then they would realize what amazing things kids are doing. So
Yeah. And I always reference God's word and saying out of the mouths of babes, because there's so many things and so much creativity when it comes from children,
absolutely.
and they have a lot to say. And it's weird because they have done studies in which, like, little kids, like kindergartners, elementary range, they have so much creativity, but then going on through, K through 12, in the 12th grade area, is less creativity, less ideas.
Yes.
And I'm wondering why. But I feel like it's because people are not, they're limiting.
Mm-hmm.
They're limiting creativity in the world.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm just so energized and so relieved that's things like this are happening.
Yeah,
because children definitely do have ideas and definitely do have things to say.
They do. And I ask them, what are some stories that you're writing? What are some, if you were to publish a book, what would you do? And I have been blown away by some of the answers the kids have. I mean, literally cracking up laughing in front of kids, because their creativity is just off the charts. And I think you're right, when you get to a certain age, that doubt creeps in. And that's one thing I really do with kids and adults, just to work with people to try to help them get past those barriers and not be mired in that self-doubt, and recognize the dreams that they have are worth pursuing, and not to let fear stop you. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give some examples? Because I'm really curious now on what they've said, some of the ideas, maybe one or two.
Oh my gosh. One kid had an idea about, I don't remember exactly, but it was something to do with diapers and things that happen around diapers, and just using that kind of as a weapon to do things. That was probably one that really stuck out. Like, it was kind of gross, but I was really giving him points for creativity. And then I had another little boy at a school here in town. Here in Louisville, he said that he said I should write a book about a boy named Adam, that was his name, who had his own lawnmower business. And I've mulled it over, and it's sort of still in my head, but he had this very well developed, like, it's my business, I mow lawns, I'm a kid, I just do this, and he had really thought it through. Kids are writing stories, they're illustrating them, they're making pictures, so yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they ask
That's
very
amazing.
intelligent questions, so.
Wow. But moving on, so
Sure.
Can you tell me more about Zoe's personality?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So she is very influenced by her grandmother. She is a very respectful child. Her parents are loving, of course, but they are not ones to put up with a lot of nonsense, if you will. And she's a good friend. She has very close ties with her friends, but very close to her family. She recognizes her strength and things that she wants to change. She's not stubborn, but very much a determined young lady. And it's in the Zoe's Garden book, in one of the scenes where the thicker one, yes, her cousins have a garden to plant that summer, and she said, oh, I'll do it. And they said, well, we'll help you. She said, no, I can do it myself. And she goes out to do it by herself, and she doesn't get enough direction. She doesn't really listen to what they say, and she's faltering, but she's a little bit too prideful to come back and ask for help. And she rests in the greenhouse, and then when she wakes up from her little 15-minute nap, she comes out, and the young man here, Trevor, has come into the garden unasked, uninvited, and planted rows of vegetables, rows of the seedlings. And Zoe gets very upset, and she's like, what are you doing? Get out of here. And she runs him off, and then she looks at the garden and sees that Trevor has planted the seedlings so orderly, so properly, and she recognizes, okay, this kid knows what he's doing, I obviously don't, and she has to humble herself and ask for help. I don't want to give too much of the story away, and that's okay. But so she's like a typical kid, can be stubborn and prideful, but she recognizes lessons that she needs to learn. She's a very honest girl. She gets caught in a little bit of a fib in the book and tells on herself. So I like to show that she's a person of character, and she always comes around in the end to do what's right. So
Got it.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So I have co-authored a book, Up to Bat, if anyone's heard of it, and the book brings autistic awareness to the community. My 3 siblings, Danielle, Dominique, and DJ, all have autism. And growing up with that, at first I didn't understand. They reach milestones a little slower than other people, and sometimes faster. For example, they weren't able to talk, but they were somewhat babbling. So, and that was during kind of my age because they're closely to me. So I assume when I went to school and everything, I was like, oh, they just speak Spanish. And, when I look back at it, it's really kind of funny, but really they didn't speak Spanish. It's just how they were. And they've definitely improved over the years. I'm so proud and thankful to God that they have. And we have written this book to bring awareness that they need certain things to adapt. For example, my brother DJ, he actually has a color-coded collection of earbuds because he does not like loud noise, or really that noise in general. And people are used to autism by saying they're in their own world, which is true. That's why they're usually isolated, although it's not always true, because my sister is actually very social, cheerleading team, basketball team, homecoming queen, etc. like that. And she loves being social, and she wants to get to know people, etc. So it's all on the spectrum, but definitely in the book, we not only put physical features, because one main thing is that we're all bears. The family, we colored in and we drew the family as bears, for children to expect, and just to make it more fun. And we drew the whole family with the certain adaptations, like my sister had on a vest to calm her down, because usually young people with autism have a sort of hyperness to them, and they bounce, etc. And of course the earbuds that was held by my brother to block out the noise from certain things in the situation. So I feel like definitely having that personality in there is, key. But
and I purposely wanted to make Trevor, I didn't identify his personality or what was going on with him, but if you have a kid on the spectrum, or you may be reading and you are autistic or on the spectrum, you may find yourself in Trevor. So that's one thing I wanted to do, to add diversity to the books in a lot of different ways. And that's part of Zoe's struggle, is figuring out, why won't this kid talk to me? Why does he talk to my cousin? What's his story? And she thinks Trevor hates her, but it's that Trevor needs time to get to know her, like you say, to break down those barriers and be comfortable socially with her. So that was one thing I think it's important to, and I'm a bit obsessed, like I have friends with kids with diabetes, type 1 and things. I would love to be able to write a book so that every child can find themselves in there and recognize, just to see themselves in a story and find a hero in a book. So that's one thing. If I could write all the books in the world, I would do that. I'd probably spend my whole life doing that. So.
That's awesome. But with Trevor and Zoe, is there a certain inspiration from maybe people just in real life that has inspired you to create those personalities in the book?
Probably my experiences in general, but no person that I could put my finger on exactly. So yeah, just something I wanted to explore in the writing, just to give a person to bounce Zoe off of in the book, where this is a friend, you're good at making friends, but this is a friend you're going to have to learn some new skills to make your friend. So yeah.
And so we're going to go to the other books. So first I want to elaborate on a sister for my birthday. Do you mind giving a summary on this?
Sure. So my 3 toddler books, they're like toddler, kindergarten, first grade range. These are, I call them my legacy books. So these are the books that I wrote for my 3 children, and each one tells a story about their life. So a sister for my birthday, this is representing my son Quincy and my daughter Olivia, who's in my belly. And Olivia was actually born on Quincy's birthday. So it just tells a story of Quincy waiting for his sister to come, and what that's like to have a sister born on your on your birthday. So it's a very short book, an easy read for families, but just to show again that love and what could have been a day where he was upset. You know, it's my birthday, what's going on? It just shows how he loved his sister. So
okay,
yeah.
so this is real. This is a real life experience.
Yes.
That's great. So of course that was your inspiration.
Yes.
That's great. And I've noticed, if you don't mind me asking,
Sure.
of course the thicker books on Zoe's Garden and Zoe's Sidewalk, the illustrations are in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
While the toddler books, such as My Sister for My Birthday,
Mm-hmm.
has colored images. Do you mind just telling us why?
Sure. So that was sort of a lesson just for budgetary reasons.
Okay.
To do color images in the book were and that goes back to what I talked about in the last segment, the price point. Because I had priced my book too low, then my budget forced me to choose to have the illustrations in black and white. If in the ebook versions they're all in color, because of course that's online. I think if I had to do it over again, and I probably could print them over again with the color images inside, it would have almost doubled the price, maybe close to triple the price of the book. So that was just a choice that I made. But I do find that people are still like, oh, I love the illustrations, I really like these. So it adds a little bit of a different element, and since it's for a more mature audience, I think the kids are okay with it. But the toddler, young reader books, I really wanted to have in color because I know how much that color image is a motivator for kids in reading. So it was important for me to make those in color. So I invested more money in those and having them in color.
Okay,
Great
awesome.
question.
And for the toddler, okay, what is the age range for like Zoe's Gardens?
Sure.
Sidewalk?
The two Zoe books are like 2nd, 3rd grade range.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. And then toddler is just
Yeah.
younger. Okay.
Yeah, all the way
Okay.
to about 1st grade, early readers. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so moving on. Tatiana and Kitty.
Yes.
So do you mind giving us a brief summary on this? What's this about?
Yes, so this is another, like I said, one of the legacy books. And this is based on, this is my daughter Olivia depicted in the image here. And it tells a story of how our cat, who's now deceased, he followed us home one day and basically would not leave the house. So it's pretty true to form as far as what happened. The kids were like, bring the cat in the house. I'm like, no, I'm not bringing the cat in the house. This is someone else's cat.
Yeah.
But he would not leave our doorstep, so I finally let him in one day. And the kid's dad was on a trip. He traveled for a living. And he came home and there's this cat. And it's like, what's happening? But the cat had a big influence in our life, even though he was an adult cat when he came to us. My daughter took her it was her first steps toward the cat. So she's saying Kitty, and that's when she's walking toward the cat. So that was pretty momentous, and that's depicted in the book in a different way.
Okay.
But yeah, when she was sick, he would sit with her all day. He wouldn't leave her side. So it just tells a story of, how to give your love to an animal that might need, of course, a stray animal, which of course needed a home,
Okay.
and just how we embraced our cat. So
Okay, got it.
yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, this is a little too deep of a question,
Okay.
but when the cat passed away,
Mhm.
how did it impact the family?
So it was tough. My older son was away at college at the time, and we knew it was getting close because he had, I believe he had dementia, but he also had hyperthyroidism, where their thyroid is overactive and it causes them to lose a lot of weight. So he was on medication, but he was starting to really lose control of his faculties. And my older son was like, can you wait till I come home from school? And I said, sure, we'll wait, But it got to the point where he was living in a bathroom because that was the only place where he wouldn't make a big mess around the house. And we had a vacation planned for like a 4-day trip, and I just didn't have the heart to leave the cat locked up in the bathroom for 4 days, either in the dark or in the light. Like I couldn't stomach it. And so my younger two, Quincy and Olivia, and I, we discussed it, and we agreed that we would go ahead and take him to the vet. And it was a tough day. They were very strong, but once they have 2 shots that they do, and one of them just puts them into slumber, and the second shot is the one that puts them to sleep permanently. And once he went to slumber, they it was very emotional, and we're like, we're gonna go ahead and step out now, and took some time to collect themselves. So we have good memories and of course good photos, and that's another reason why I wanted to write the book, just to show, what an important part of our lives that Cheddar was. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's an awesome story.
Yeah, thank you.
And of course the last book,
Yes.
A Tiny Baby Brother. Do you mind giving a summary on this one?
Yes. So this is a story, and this image is depicting my son Raymond and his dad looking into the nursery.
I love the colors.
Yes, thank you. And it's funny because people are like, oh, I'm not going to buy this book. I don't want to have any more kids. And I promise the books will not make you pregnant. They won't bring any more people into your lives unless you choose it. But this is a story of Raymond waiting for his brother to be born, and anticipating the day, when's the baby going to come. And this is, again, based on a true story. Mom goes to the doctor and doesn't come home, and finds out that the baby has to be born today. So my middle son, Quincy, was born about 3 weeks early, but he was very low birth weight, so he had to stay in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, for 55 days after he was born. And so I wanted to share this book for other NICU families, and I'm hoping that it finds its way to kids who have brothers or sisters that are in the NICU, to recognize that even though it's a tough time, and babies are supposed to come home after a couple days in the hospital, babies don't always get to come home right away, and they visit the baby brother in the hospital, and they read to him and spend time with him, and then the day finally comes that he gets to come home. So it just shows them and gives them a little bit of reassurance that even though things don't go quite as they had planned, and their brother, the baby when he came was really tiny and had to stay in the hospital, that it ends up okay. So.
Okay. Well, can you give a brief announcement before we leave on
Sure.
your new book?
Yes, so I'm constantly writing. Like I said, I've got the bug and I can't get it out of my head. And so I also served for 27 years in the military. I did 9 years active duty, and I did 19 years, that's not the right math, 18 years of reserve duty. And so when I was on active duty, I had to actually leave my oldest son Raymond when he was about 20 months old. And I was deployed for 4 months, and it was very difficult, as you might imagine, leaving a young child like that. And so this book is the story of me being gone and the baby, and it's loosely based on the truth. The baby being at home with his dad and spending time, and mom making phone calls, and then the moment that mom comes home, and just that emotional connection. It was quite deep. When I did come home, my son basically wouldn't let me go. But just to help encourage people to know the story of moms who deploy. A lot of times in the military, people think about men in the military but don't recognize the sacrifices that women make. And I also wanted something to encourage the families to know, moms can be deployed and they come home. Ideally, of course, that's what everybody's praying for. And also to encourage the kids when their moms or dads might be deployed, just to give them something to hold on to. And it was interesting in writing that book. I always test my book on test readers, and that one I tested on some friends who were in the military, and they wrote back, they were like, I cried through the whole book. And so I tested it with someone else, and my question is, would you buy this book? And one lady's like, I would not buy this book. It's too upsetting. And so I realized that I was almost using the book for my own kind of therapy to get through that, because even though my son's 23, that was still a tough time to be away and, not knowing if you're making the right decisions. So I took it for the therapy that it was, and I edited it to make it much less, mom's gone, we miss her, everything is sad. And framing it more so, mom's gone, but everything's okay at home, mom's doing okay, and now mom's back and everybody's happy. So less tears, hopefully, because although some of the books might incur tears, nothing that makes you super sad. So that one's Mama Came Home is the title. So
that sounds amazing. I can't wait.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for, of course, being a guest and sharing your books with us.
Sure.
We're very happy. And the audience, and thank you. All right, so thank you.
I appreciate it.
This has been Americans in Crisis, A Matter of Interpretation with your teen host, Sydney Tucker. Thank you so much for watching. This is Our Efforts plus God's Grace. Thank you.
Thank you.